Every morning you wake up to a world that feels familiar, concrete, real. You go through your routine, respond to messages, make choices, experience wins and losses, feel moments of joy and patches of struggle. And somewhere in the middle of it all, a quiet voice inside might ask, is this all there is? Not because your life is dull or meaningless, but because something just doesn't feel complete. Like there's a layer of truth you can't quite touch. Like reality isn't showing you the whole picture. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are living inside a version of reality that isn't theirs. It was built for them, programmed, installed, and reinforced from the moment they were born. Everything from the way you think about time, to your perception of self, to your definition of what's real. It's been shaped by external forces. And the most dangerous part? You probably believe you've been thinking for yourself all along. This is the invisible prison. A mental matrix made of social conditioning, inherited beliefs, and linear logic. And it's not just holding you back. It's hiding your true potential. But here's where everything begins to shift. There's a deeper level of reality. One that doesn't obey the rigid rules you've been taught. A reality where time isn't linear. Where consciousness can influence the structure of matter. Where your inner world doesn't just reflect your experience, it creates it. Quantum consciousness isn't a buzzword. It's not science fiction. It's the key to decoding the illusion and stepping into a much broader, more flexible, more empowering version of reality. This video is not about abstract theories or wishful thinking. You're going to see clearly and logically how false realities are built, how you've been pulled into one without realizing it, and how your mind, when aligned with deeper quantum truths, can override it. We're going to explore 6 essential truths. Each will challenge what you've been told. Each will offer a mental reset. And each will build toward one powerful revelation. You're not stuck. You've only been tuned into a narrow frequency. And it's time to change the channel. By the end, you'll not only understand how you've been living in a filtered version of reality. You'll have the tools and awareness to shift into a more expansive one, where perception bends, time opens up, and your identity stops being a trap and starts becoming your power. Stay with me. This is where your false reality starts to fall apart and your real one begins. Everything you believe about the world, your opinions, your logic, your assumptions about what's possible and what's not, wasn't formed in a vacuum. Long before you could form complex thoughts, you were absorbing reality through a lens someone else crafted. From the moment you could understand language, you were told what things meant. You were taught what's valuable, what's achievable, what's normal. These weren't just ideas, they became the building blocks of your perception. And those building blocks now form the invisible walls of your mental environment. It's called conditioning, and it's not inherently evil, but it's incredibly limiting. Take education, for example. You were likely taught to memorize facts, follow systems, and repeat approved models of thinking. You weren't taught how to critically reshape reality. You weren't trained to trust your intuitive intelligence or question the architecture of belief itself. That's by design. Systems want predictability. Societies want conformity. And people who ask deeper questions are often labeled as impractical or worse, unstable. But here's the truth that changes everything. You're not experiencing reality itself. You're experiencing a filtered version of it. A version that's been passed through the mental frameworks given to you. These mental frameworks are known as reality tunnels. A reality tunnel is a cognitive framework that determines what you notice, what you ignore, what you believe is real, and what you dismiss. Two people can live in the same neighborhood, have access to the same information, and encounter the same events, yet interpret everything entirely differently based on the reality tunnel they're stuck in. You don't perceive the world as it is. You perceive it as you are. Now let's introduce something that quantum physics has confirmed. The act of observation influences outcome. This is known as the observer effect. In experiments, particles behave differently depending on whether or not they're being observed. The implication: consciousness isn't just watching reality. It's shaping it. So if consciousness is active, not passive, then what you perceive, and more importantly how you perceive it, becomes the mechanism by which your reality is formed. Now stop and think about that. If your perceptions are shaped by conditioning, and those perceptions are constantly interacting with the field of potentiality that makes up the quantum universe. Then it means your conditioning isn't just affecting your beliefs, it's determining which version of reality you collapse into. Because in quantum mechanics, everything exists in a field of possibilities. At every moment, an infinite number of outcomes are available. But only one becomes actualized, the one that matches your current frequency of thought, belief, and expectation. So if you've been conditioned to believe in scarcity, you'll mostly encounter lack. If you've been trained to distrust intuition, you'll ignore signals that could have saved you time, energy, or pain. If you've absorbed the idea that success is reserved for the few, your subconscious will build a reality that proves it true. And here's the most overlooked part. You can't think your way out of this false reality with the same conditioned mind that built it. You need to shift perception. And that requires stepping outside the system that taught you how to perceive in the first place. This is where awareness becomes your weapon. When you start noticing the scripts you've been given, scripts like, life is hard, you have to struggle to succeed, or you can't trust your inner knowing, you can begin the process of rejecting them. Not blindly, but consciously. You don't need rebellion. You need clarity. Awareness allows you to rewrite the code. Here's the shift. Instead of viewing the world as a fixed, objective machine, begin seeing it as a malleable field. One that reshapes itself based on the dominant signals you emit through belief, emotion, and expectation. This isn't wishful thinking. It's rooted in the fact that your mind isn't separate from the fabric of the universe. In fact, it's entangled with it. And what you assume to be real, what you assume to be the limits of life, is often nothing more than a reflection of old programming collapsing infinite probability into one narrow stream of experience. You've been choosing a limited outcome without even knowing there were other doors to open. But now you do, and that knowledge by itself begins to shake the illusion. Ready for the next layer? Let's talk about the greatest trap of all. The way you experience time. You're taught that time moves forward, that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, that your past is behind you, your future is ahead, and the only moment you truly occupy is a fleeting now, slipping away every second. This concept is drilled into your consciousness from childhood. Calendars, clocks, deadlines, and life milestones reinforce it every single day. But here's the disruption. Linear time is not the full picture. It's a useful model for organizing life in a physical world, but it's not the fundamental truth of how reality works. In fact, clinging to the idea of time as a straight line is one of the key reasons you feel stuck, limited, and disconnected from your own power. Let's look at why. First, understand this: time as experienced through your mind is a construct. Your brain organizes memories and predictions in a sequence because it helps with survival. It lets you learn from past mistakes and plan for future events. But in quantum physics, time behaves very differently. It's not fixed, it's not absolute, and it doesn't flow the way you've been told. At the quantum level, the building blocks of reality operate outside of traditional time. A particle can exist in multiple states at once until observed. Events that are separated by space can influence each other instantly. In some interpretations of quantum mechanics, all possible pasts, presents, and futures coexist simultaneously in what's called the block universe. Now pause and let that sink in, because the implications are massive. If past, present, and future are coexisting, then it means you're not stuck in a linear path, you're tuned in to a particular version of that path. Not unlike tuning a radio, the rest of the station frequencies are still there. You just aren't hearing them because you're locked onto one. This opens the door to a radical truth. You can change your experience of reality not by waiting for time to pass, but by changing your internal alignment with a different version of now. Think about how much of your identity is shaped by time. You define yourself by your memories. You carry emotional weight from events that, according to the clock, happened years ago. But neurologically and energetically, those events are still active in your field. Why? Because your body doesn't measure time with a calendar. It responds to energy and emotion. If you revisit a painful memory with the same emotional response, you're essentially reliving that moment, not remembering it. You're signaling to your system that it's still happening now. This keeps the trauma alive, the identity stuck, and the frequency trapped. This is the time loop people live in. Now flip that logic. If you can emotionally and mentally align with a potential version of your future, one that feels empowered, abundant, joyful, your body begins to respond as if that reality is happening now. This isn't just self-help theory. It's how the mind-body system interacts with the quantum field. When the emotion, thought, and intention align, you're sending a coherent signal into the field that corresponds with a different point on the timeline. In simple terms, you're shifting tracks, not waiting for a different future to arrive. You're stepping into one that's already existing at a different energetic frequency. The problem is, most people are unconsciously anchored to their past and dragging it into every new moment. They say things like, "I've always been this way. This is just who I am. Things never work out for me." These statements don't just describe reality, they reinforce it. They act like glue, binding your perception to a narrow timeline where nothing changes, no matter how many days go by. You feel like you're moving forward, but inside you're reliving the same scripts, emotions, and reactions. And because you experience those patterns as normal, you mistake them for truth. But they're not truth. They're habitual frequency states. They're what happens when you let your past write your future on repeat. Let's shift to solution now. How do you break out of the illusion of linear time? First, by recognizing that the now is not a single fleeting moment. It's a wide portal that gives you access to every potential version of you. Not just who you've been, but who you could be right now. You can activate new timelines by changing what you feel, believe, and expect in the present. One of the most powerful tools? Mental rehearsal. This isn't fantasy or escapism. It's the process of experiencing a desired future through your mind and emotions so vividly that your nervous system starts to treat it as real. Not in a delusional sense, but in a preparatory one. When you imagine yourself already in the reality you desire, feeling the emotions you would feel, embodying the confidence you would have, responding with the clarity that future you would hold, you're collapsing the distance between where you are and where you want to be. You're no longer just walking forward in time. You're folding time toward you. Another key, presence. Presence is not just mindfulness. It's the energetic power of becoming fully aware of the moment you're in, without dragging your past into it or projecting fear into the future. When you master presence, you gain access to the deeper dimension behind the illusion of time. You begin to sense that your decisions are not just influencing outcomes. They are becoming portals to entirely new versions of reality. Here's a mind-bending truth. From the standpoint of quantum consciousness, your future self already exists. And when you tune into that self emotionally and mentally, you create a resonance, a vibrational match, that pulls that future toward your current experience. That's why some people seem to quantum leap in life. Not because they got lucky, but because they stopped using the past as a reference point and began using their higher potential as the blueprint. Linear time tells you to wait. Quantum consciousness invites you to align. So the next time you feel stuck in a loop, stop asking how long it will take. Start asking what version of yourself you're currently embodying, and which version you're willing to become. The moment you break the timeline illusion, you stop being a passive traveler and start becoming a conscious architect. Are you ready to confront the next great illusion, your own identity? You've been taught to answer that question in a specific way. You recite your name, your age, your job title. You list your achievements, your roles, your preferences. And underneath all of that, there's a quiet assumption that your identity is fixed, anchored in your history, your appearance, and the way others see you. But here's the disruption. None of that is who you truly are. Those are roles. Those are stories. Those are mental bookmarks in a constantly changing stream of awareness. And mistaking them for your identity is one of the deepest illusions of all. Let's unpack it with precision. The brain builds a sense of self by organizing memories, habits, emotional patterns, and sensory feedback. This construct is known as the ego identity. It's incredibly useful for functioning in the world. It helps you navigate relationships, make decisions, and interpret experience. But it's not the core of who you are, it's a mental interface. Think of it like an avatar in a video game. The character responds to the environment, but the consciousness controlling it exists beyond the screen. In the same way, the real you, the conscious observer, isn't defined by your thoughts, emotions, or even your body. You are the awareness that notices all of those things. And that awareness is not confined to one time, place, or personality. It's fluid, it's multidimensional, and most importantly, it's non-local. This is where quantum consciousness shifts the entire paradigm. In quantum physics, the observer effect shows that observation doesn't just record reality, it alters it. The presence of a conscious observer changes how particles behave. That suggests something staggering. Consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain. It's a fundamental force, possibly the most fundamental. This means you're not a mind inside a body. You're a field of awareness expressing itself through a body, through a personality, through a moment in time. And that field isn't separate from the quantum field that gives rise to all physical reality. When you see yourself as a static self, you lock into a limited version of reality. You say things like, "I'm not the type of person who can do that. I've never been good at this. This is just how I am." Those statements become commands. They inform your frequency. They signal to the field what version of reality you're choosing. And since the field responds to coherence, it mirrors that identity right back to you. Not as punishment, just as a response. Now here's the key. Identity is not a fact. It's a frequency. You can shift your identity by changing what you consistently feel, believe, and embody. That's not wishful thinking, it's frequency modulation. Think of your identity as a radio signal. You've been transmitting one particular signal for so long that you've forgotten you can change the station. But the dial is in your hands, and quantum consciousness gives you the map. So how do you begin shifting? Start by recognizing the illusion of permanence. Who you were yesterday is not who you are today. Even on a cellular level, your body is constantly regenerating. Emotionally, mentally, energetically, you're never the same person twice. Yet you cling to the idea of a stable identity because it feels safe, predictable, familiar. But familiar doesn't mean true. Many people unknowingly hold onto pain because it reinforces their sense of self. I'm the person who was betrayed. I'm the one who failed. I'm the outsider. These identities form emotional anchors. They justify current limitations. They explain why things haven't worked. And unconsciously, they become protective walls, keeping transformation out. To shift identity, you have to become intentionally inconsistent with your past. You have to stop reacting like the old self would. You have to think like the future self thinks, even if it feels unfamiliar. Especially then. Here's a practical way to begin. Ask yourself this question. If I had no memory of who I've been, who would I choose to be right now? Let that answer rise from beyond the intellect. Let it come from feeling, from intuition, from the quiet inner knowing that isn't shaped by fear or history. Then practice being that version of you. Not in big dramatic moves, but in the micro decisions of daily life. How would they walk into a room? What would they tolerate? How would they speak to themselves when no one else is listening? Each time you choose a thought, feeling, or behavior aligned with a higher version of you, you send a new signal into the field. And with enough consistency, the field rearranges to match it. Why? Because the universe doesn't respond to who you were. It responds to who you're being now. Let's tie this back to quantum mechanics again. At the quantum level, reality exists in a superposition, multiple outcomes existing at once. What collapses those potentials into a single experience is observation. In human terms, your attention is the selector. So when you focus on an identity that is limited, reactive, or fearful, you're collapsing into that version of reality. But when you focus on being someone who is capable, aware, and energetically aligned, you collapse a different possibility. You are not here to reinforce an identity based on survival. You are here to explore, evolve, and express a consciousness that is far greater than anything you've been taught to believe. Now, here's the final layer. The moment you begin witnessing your thoughts without becoming them, observing your emotions without drowning in them, and choosing your actions without defaulting to habit, you're awakening the true self. The self that exists beyond labels, timelines, and roles. And that self is not bound by your past. It's not defined by your resume. It's not controlled by your conditioning. It's the you that's always been watching, quietly, patiently, waiting for the moment you realize. The person you thought you were was just a costume, and you can take it off. Next, we're going deeper into the shocking truth that you're already living in multiple realities, and how your consciousness decides which one becomes your life. Ready for that? There's a version of you who made a different choice yesterday, who answered the call instead of ignoring it, who took the risk, spoke the truth, walked away, said yes, said no. That version isn't just a fantasy or a mental what could have been. It exists, and here's the shocker, so do countless others. Modern physics offers a framework known as the many worlds interpretation. It proposes that every possible outcome of every decision spawns its own reality. These aren't symbolic. They are literal according to the theory. Each decision branches into a new timeline, where each version of you plays out a different scenario. This isn't fiction. This is one of the serious considerations within quantum mechanics. So where does your consciousness fit into this? Your awareness isn't locked to one fixed path. It's tuned in like a signal, and it constantly shifts based on the frequency of your thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and expectations. That means you're already moving between parallel realities all the time, but you're doing it unconsciously. Let's make this concrete. Think back to a time in your life when everything felt off. Maybe you were emotionally drained, mentally overwhelmed, or stuck in cycles of doubt and fear. During that time, your external world likely reflected that internal state. You encountered resistance, closed doors, miscommunication, stagnation. Then think of a time when everything seemed to flow, when you felt aligned, calm, focused, and energized. During those moments, people showed up unexpectedly to help. Ideas clicked into place. Synchronicities multiplied. These weren't coincidences. They were shifts in timelines. When your emotional frequency rises, you don't just feel better. You enter a reality where better things are already true. Your consciousness locks onto a different path, and everything that path includes starts becoming accessible. The people, the opportunities, the timing, it's all part of that timeline's energetic structure. This is not the law of attraction as it's often watered down. This isn't just thinking positively and hoping for results. This is about vibrational alignment with actual alternate versions of reality, each one encoded with different outcomes. And here's what most people miss. You don't need to create a better future. It already exists. You only need to shift into alignment with it. Now, how does that shift happen? Through two primary mechanisms, attention and emotion. Let's start with attention. Your attention is currency. Wherever you invest it, you're activating that version of reality. Spend your attention on fear, lack, and limitation, and you'll tune into a world that confirms those feelings. Spend it on vision, gratitude, and clarity, and you shift into a timeline where those qualities are reflected back. But attention alone isn't enough. You need emotion to amplify the signal. Emotion gives your focus charge. It's like electricity running through a wire. That's why daydreaming about a better life, but emotionally dwelling in frustration or self-doubt, doesn't lead to change. Your mind is on one timeline. Your energy is on another. There's no coherence. And the quantum field responds to coherence. So to shift timelines deliberately, your thoughts, emotions, and actions must all resonate with the frequency of the reality you want to inhabit. Let's break that down. Let's say you want to experience a version of your life where you feel financially free. That timeline already exists. But to align with it, you can't carry the identity of someone who's anxious about money, distrustful of flow, and mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios. You have to embody the energetic posture of the version of you who already lives in that reality. That means thinking the way they would think, feeling the way they would feel, making decisions based on their level of clarity, not your current fears. And no, this isn't pretending. It's tuning. When you align your frequency, the quantum field responds by providing experiences that reflect that shift. That's not metaphysical fluff. It's the natural result of resonance. Coherence leads to attraction. Misalignment leads to friction. So how do you create alignment? Visualization is a powerful method, but not in the traditional sense. You're not visualizing to wish something into existence. You're visualizing to access the sensory code of another timeline. You're immersing yourself in the feeling tone, the body language, the rhythm of a parallel you who already exists. And when you do this consistently, you begin to blur the line between that reality and this one. You begin to respond to life not from the memory of who you've been, but from the signal of who you're becoming. And that shift is what allows the field to rearrange itself around your new frequency. Another key technique is neutralization. This means emotionally unhooking from timelines that no longer serve you. When you carry resentment, fear, regret, or shame, you're energetically tied to the reality in which those emotions dominate. And you'll keep looping through it, even when better paths are available, because your emotional charge keeps you magnetized to the old. Neutralization isn't apathy, it's clarity. It's the process of extracting your energy from outdated storylines so you can reinvest it into timelines that match your current intent. And here's the final insight. These shifts can happen fast. Not always, but faster than most people believe. Because time is elastic, reality is malleable, and identity is fluid. You don't have to fix everything in your current world before stepping into a better one. You simply need to start shifting who you're being in the now. That shift creates new choices. Those choices create new outcomes. And soon, you look around and realize you're in a world that feels different. Not because the old one changed, but because you changed which version of you was navigating it. This is the power of quantum awareness. You are never stuck. You are never static. You are a field of consciousness capable of broadcasting into infinite frequencies. And each one leads to a distinct experience of reality. The question is no longer, how do I get there? The question becomes, who do I need to become to match the version of reality I want to experience? And that question unlocks doors far faster than time ever will. Ready to decode the mechanics behind manifestation, not as magic, but as quantum alignment? Let me know, and I'll take you into the next truth. You've heard the word manifestation 1,000 times. You've seen the glossy versions on social media, vision boards, mantras, positive affirmations. But most of that material barely scratches the surface. It reduces a complex and precise process to a feel-good ritual. This isn't about wishful thinking. It's not about attracting something by wanting it hard enough. True manifestation is not magic. It's the result of energetic resonance between your consciousness and the quantum field. And once you understand how it actually works, you stop waiting for life to happen, you start designing it. Let's ground this with clarity. The quantum field, what physicists refer to as the unified field, is an invisible ocean of energy and potential. Everything you could possibly experience exists there as a probability, not as a thought, not as a metaphor, as literal, measurable, energetic possibilities. Your job isn't to make something appear. Your job is to become a match for the version of reality where that thing already exists. To understand this, we need to talk about entanglement. In quantum physics, entanglement is the phenomenon where two particles become linked in such a way that the state of one instantly influences the state of the other, regardless of distance. This defies classical physics and suggests that everything in the universe is interconnected at a level that transcends space and time. Now apply that to consciousness. Your thoughts and emotions aren't just contained inside your skull. They're vibrational outputs. Each one sends a signal into the field, and that signal influences which potential outcomes move from possibility into actual experience. You are already entangled with the outcomes you emotionally focus on the most. If you live in a state of resentment, anxiety, or fear, your consciousness is entangled with the versions of reality that mirror those emotions. You're feeding energy into them. And the field responds not because it judges, but because it reflects. So manifestation isn't about forcing results. It's about shifting which version of the field you're attuned to. Let's break it down further. You think you want a particular result, more money, better health, deeper relationships. But if the energy behind that desire is desperation, fear, or scarcity, you're broadcasting the opposite of what you say you want. The field doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your coherence. Coherence means alignment between your thoughts, your emotions, and your internal sense of reality. When you say, "I want abundance," but your nervous system is flooded with anxiety and your beliefs are soaked in doubt, you are incoherent. You are sending mixed signals. And the field, being neutral, mirrors the dominant one, usually the fear. To create change, you need energetic integrity. That means the thought of what you desire must match the feeling of already having it. That feeling isn't just emotional, it's vibrational. When your internal state reflects the frequency of the outcome, you become the cause. You stop chasing outcomes and start magnetizing them. This is where coherence becomes a tool. And coherence starts with clarity. Clarity means knowing exactly what experience you want and why. Not in vague terms like more success, but in clear energetic codes. How does that reality feel? How do you think in it? How do you move through the world? What do you stop tolerating? The more vividly you define the state of being you're calling in, the more effectively your consciousness tunes to it. This is the precise function of quantum visualization. You're not imagining a fantasy. You're aligning your internal blueprint with a version of reality that already exists in the field. When the mind rehearses, the body remembers. Neural networks begin to shift. Hormones and chemistry follow. You stop hoping for something to happen and begin embodying the state where it already has. Another overlooked element is coherence through the heart. The HeartMath Institute and other research bodies have shown that the electromagnetic field of the heart is significantly more powerful than that of the brain. When your heart and mind are in emotional alignment, you produce heart-brain coherence, a state in which your body becomes a transmitter of highly stable, focused energy. That's when you move beyond just thinking about outcomes. You start broadcasting the frequency of those outcomes. You're not waiting, you're radiating. And the quantum field is listening. There's one more aspect that separates effective manifestation from fantasy: choice without attachment. This means selecting a timeline with full intent and clarity, but without the emotional charge of needing it to happen in a specific way or time frame. Attachment creates resistance. It signals to the field that you're incomplete without the outcome. That lowers your frequency and introduces tension, which clouds the signal. True manifestation happens when you can say, "This is already real in my field. I don't need it to prove itself. I'm already living in the emotional truth of it." That confidence, calm, grounded, unattached, is one of the clearest signals you can send. Let's make this actionable now. Here's a simple quantum framework to realign your manifesting power. Identify the exact version of reality you want to experience. Go beyond objects or numbers. What's the feeling tone? What's the emotional signature? Observe your current frequency. Are your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions aligned with the outcome or contradicting it? Release all stories and attachments that affirm the opposite. Let go of identities that say, "This never works out for me." That's not humility. It's energetic sabotage. Rehearse the reality. In meditation, in quiet moments, in movement. Feel what it's like to already live it. Let your body become familiar with that timeline. Anchor the frequency through micro-actions. Take steps consistent with the future you're embodying. Even small choices reinforce the shift. Allow the field to deliver. Let the how and when unfold. Stay receptive, not obsessive. Certainty and energy is more powerful than control and strategy. Now look back and see what's changed in your understanding. You're not here to wish. You're not here to chase. You're here to consciously collapse probabilities into experience by tuning your frequency with precision and integrity. Manifestation isn't something you do. It's something that happens when who you are becomes congruent with what you desire. You are not a passive receiver of reality. You are the transmitter, the selector, and the activator. And your next level is already waiting for a signal. Now that you've seen how reality responds to your inner frequency, it's time to bring it all together. Ready to unlock the practical roadmap for living in quantum consciousness every single day? Search. Deep research. You've now seen the mechanisms. You've decoded the matrix of false beliefs, untangled time, unmasked identity, and exposed how your consciousness selects from infinite timelines. You've grasped that manifestation is not mystical. It's measurable. But knowing these truths intellectually is not the finish line. Awakening quantum consciousness is not about collecting information. It's about activating a new operating system, one that doesn't just shift how you see the world, but fundamentally changes how reality responds to you. This isn't a one-time breakthrough. It's a daily practice, a committed recalibration, and it begins with one powerful truth. You are not inside reality. Reality is inside your consciousness. When you understand this, not just as a theory, but as an embodied truth, everything changes. You stop reacting. You stop doubting. You stop waiting for external conditions to grant you permission to feel free, powerful, or whole. You become the source. And from that point forward, you stop living by default and start living by design. So how do you begin to embody this? How do you anchor quantum consciousness in the way you think, feel, and move through life? It starts with awareness, not the vague kind. This is surgical awareness, the kind that notices your thoughts as they arise and evaluates them not as truth, but as signals. Each thought carries a frequency, a weight, a momentum. Most people allow them to loop unexamined. Narratives like, "This is too hard. I'm not good enough. Things always go wrong." These aren't facts. They're energetic programs. And every time you accept them, you reinforce the version of you that lives by them. Awakening quantum consciousness means interrupting these loops. It means catching thoughts before they become emotion, catching emotion before it becomes identity, and catching identity before it becomes your default reality. This is mental discipline, not rigid control, but flexible presence. A sharp, soft awareness that chooses what to amplify and what to release. From awareness, you move to intentional thought. Every thought you choose is a vote for a version of reality. When you begin to think not from your past, but from your desired state, your mind becomes a generator, not a recycler. So instead of wondering, "How will this work?" you think, "I know the field is responding to my alignment." Instead of asking, "When will things change?" you declare, "My frequency is already shifting the structure around me." These aren't affirmations. They're identity statements. And each time you think from this level, you reinforce coherence between your inner world and your external reflection. Next, you master emotional regulation. This doesn't mean you suppress emotions. It means you understand that emotions are feedback, not destiny. Quantum consciousness doesn't require you to feel positive 100% of the time, but it does demand emotional honesty. That means facing emotional triggers, asking what belief they reveal, and choosing whether that belief is in alignment with the reality you're building. For example, if rejection triggers unworthiness, you don't just soothe yourself. You investigate the core story. Why do I believe this means something about my value? Then you rewire it, not by force, but by choosing a new meaning and embodying it emotionally until it becomes your dominant signal. Emotion is your tuning fork, and when you master your emotional frequency, you're no longer at the mercy of circumstance. You're a conductor of experience. Now comes energetic discipline. This is the daily alignment work, not grand rituals, but micro-movements of intention. Quantum consciousness thrives on consistency. The field responds to sustained vibration, not erratic bursts of hope. That means creating space in your day to reconnect with your true signal. A few core practices can anchor this. Meditation, not to escape thought, but to observe it. To return to the still point where all possibilities exist. This stillness is not emptiness. It's raw potential. Sit with it until you feel the spaciousness return to your body. Quantum journaling. Write from the future self. Describe life as it already exists in your desired timeline. Let the words train your nervous system to believe in that version. This isn't pretending. It's preparation. Breathwork and body awareness. Your body stores identity. Shift your posture, your breath, your movement, and you shift who you're being. Move as the version of you who already lives in alignment. Train the body to trust safety, power, and expansion. Vision anchoring. Revisit your goals, not as far-off dreams, but as coordinates in the field that you're consistently walking toward. Make decisions that match that trajectory, even small ones, especially small ones. Here's what most people miss. You don't shift your life through intensity. You shift it through consistency, through the daily decision to align more with your truth than your history. Every moment offers two paths, the familiar self or the expanded self, the default or the designer, the version you've been or the version you're activating. Quantum consciousness is not about adding more. It's about removing what's false, letting go of identities that no longer fit, beliefs that no longer serve, emotions that no longer define you. And when that happens, you begin to live in tune with the field itself. Life becomes responsive. Time becomes flexible. Your sense of self becomes spacious. And the illusion of separation between you and your desires, between thought and outcome, between self and universe, begins to dissolve. You don't become powerful. You remember that you always were. You don't escape a false reality. You wake up to the truth that it was never fixed to begin with. This is the core of quantum consciousness. You are the field observing itself through form. You are both the dreamer and the dream, and you can change everything now by choosing to be someone new. So here's the challenge and the invitation. No more waiting. No more rehearsing limitation. No more arguing for your constraints. You've seen the illusion. You've decoded the architecture. And now the choice is yours. Keep repeating the story that keeps you in the loop. Or upgrade your consciousness and change the entire game. You're not just meant to understand reality. You're meant to reshape it with clarity, alignment, and the full knowing that the version of you who already lives in freedom is not far away. They're just one shift in consciousness away.